Welcome to our very final episode of 2024. If you're listening to this in 2025, I can guarantee today's content is going to be wildly helpful for you. This is timeless stuff. But today I'm interviewing an incredible guest all around imposter syndrome. This is something that pretty much I think all of us feel on some level at different levels in our business. So my special guest, Corcoran, and I really discuss imposter syndrome and where it shows up in our businesses, where it might be holding you back. And Christine kind of switches imposter syndrome on its head and helps you work out how you can use it as your superpower. It's so interesting. And I loved her insights and I cannot wait for you to hear it. And so before we dive in, if you don't know who Christine is, Christine Corcoran is a high-ticket sales strategist and business mindset master coach dedicated to helping B2B female entrepreneurs attract aligned clients, close high-ticket sales, and scale their businesses with confidence. As a visionary behind Unstoppable Sales, Next Level Masterminds, and the Thrive Retreat, Christine combines her expertise in sales strategy and mindset coaching to deliver transformative results. Christine really takes a holistic approach, diving into the subconscious mind to help her clients overcome limiting beliefs and self-sabotaging behaviors. Her passion lies in supporting ambitious entrepreneurs to unlock their potential, master their money mindset, and confidently step into the next level of their success. She is a sought-after speaker, podcast host, and coach. Christine's mission is clear: to help women grow businesses they love while achieving true freedom, peace, and profitability. So let's dive into today's episode. So welcome, Christine, to the podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here. We were chatting just before we started recording that I don't know how our worlds hadn't collided before now because we've got so many mutual contacts, but here we are and I'm very excited for our conversation. So how you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I'm so excited for our conversation. So glad to be connected with you because I've heard the same similar, so much good stuff about you. So I'm so glad to be connected.
Likewise. Okay, so I'm going to start you off with a question I ask all of my guests, which is to get a bit of behind the scenes access to what goes on in Christine's life other than what we see online in business. Plus also that, what does that all look like? So what's an average day on your life and business look like from the moment you get up to when you go to bed?
I love this question, and because I feel like sometimes we see so much, but then we don't see it all. And I try to do my best to show what my life looks like online as best I can, but we're all human, and sometimes I do forget, and you sometimes forget what I have actually shared. So my days have actually changed a bit since recently, actually. So I just recently moved from the Gold Coast down to Brisbane, and I did that for a reason. I was feeling a little bit more like I was living in a bit of a concrete jungle, and I was actually spending too much time in my house, in the four walls. So I was like, I actually need to shift up my environment, and I feel like I needed more nature. So I decided to move back down to the Gold Coast. I've lived here before, but really want to be close to the beach because I'm really a big believer of our environment having such a big impact on us. So now what my day looks like is I usually start my day by getting up, having breakfast, and finding somewhere enjoyable to sit in order for me to do my morning meditation and set my intentions for the day. Obviously, I'm a mindset coach, so mindset is a huge component of what it is that I do, and I very much walk my talk. It's so important to me that I do that, and so I start my day with meditation or breath work or movement. Sometimes I'll go for a walk. I'll head to the beach and go for a walk on the beach, which has been so magical now that I get to do that. It's honestly the best. And so I've been kind of finding different places in my house to figure out what my morning routine, but at the moment it's outside on the patio in front of the pool, which I've got a beautiful view. And so I sit there, do my morning meditation. And then what I normally do is then go get ready. I dress for work. So even though I work from home, it's important to me that I dress for work. I don't find that I'm very productive when I put sweats on. So I try not to do that. And then I'll head to my office and then basically look at my calendar and see what my day is going to bring. I love that my day can be different from day to day. So I have pretty much a schedule across the week where my Mondays are my CEO days. And so I spend a lot of time working on the business, working with my team and really executing on growth focused activities. And then my Tuesday are my Unstoppable Sales days. That's where I work with my program clients on a Tuesday. Usually it's where we're doing our live calls. Wednesday is one-on-one clients. Thursdays is my Next Level Mastermind clients and usually some podcasting. And then Friday is my day to choose. So I don't really schedule a lot on a Friday and I don't ever see clients on a Friday. So I like to keep that kind of free to really enjoy whatever life brings and leave it open for the magic. So my days look different in regards to what I'm spending time on, but usually I'll be in my office and I will be obviously on Zoom a lot of the time or be working on something that I'm creating. Then I'll usually finish up ideally around say 3 o'clock. I don't like to work very much beyond that unless I'm in a growth season and I'm really working towards something. So sometimes then I'll spend a little bit more time, but usually I'll leave the office close the doors, go to the beach or go for a walk and do some type of movement before I then head into what my evening will look like. And that could be out to dinner with friends, hanging out with family, or it could be just on my own, enjoying my own time. I do love my own time, and I lived alone for a really long time, so it's really nice to enjoy that alone time, especially with the way that I serve a lot of my clients. It is important to me to have that space for myself. And then, I might have a bath before bed, or I might just doze off to a meditation.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I love hearing that insight because it's just, as you say, it's so interesting. Like we share, like I try to share a lot of my life too, but there's so much that and there's so much of life that just feels really boring. Like, why would I bother sharing this? But it's like actually feeling the whole pattern would be nice. So that sounds really cool. I've just moved out to a spot where we're out on some more property, staying here for a few months. And I'm like, it's kind of, it's just a different environment. I'm feeling a bit slower and a bit nicer.
Perfect.
It's really cool. Okay, so what I want to focus on our chat is imposter syndrome. And I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs feel at one part of their journey or another. And so I'd love to get your insight into this because I feel like you will have coached so many people through it. And I don't know whether you've faced it yourself or not. I'll ask you that soon. And so what would just to set the scene, how would you even define imposter syndrome?
So imposter syndrome, if you look it up in the dictionary, is basically the definition highlights like it's a thought pattern that we experience where we're doubting our worth. So we're doubting whether we're good enough, we're doubting whether we have the skills, the talents, the abilities in order for us to feel deserving of what we've achieved. So there's this element around like there's the mindset piece where deserving or believed, they're two very intangible things, right? So when I think about it from that perspective, imposter syndrome in my belief system is it's a fear-based thought pattern. That's what it is. And it shows up when we're growing and we're stepping outside of our comfort zone. So when you're doing your thing and you're doing things that you've always done and you're going through the motions and you're not really putting yourself outside your comfort zone, you don't normally experience the imposter syndrome. And so usually it's showing up when we're stretching ourselves and we're putting ourselves out there and going after things we've never done before, stepping into the unknown. And at the end of the day, it's literally a protection mechanism, a fear-based thought pattern that shows up to cause us to play small, to then step back into the comfort zone where we're safe. Now, that's the brain's way of keeping us safe. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, right? Like that safety piece, like how safe you can be in your comfort zone, because it gets to a point where if you've been in your comfort zone long enough, you actually feel like you're not fulfilled and you feel like you want to do something different because you're bored. So there's only so much of our comfort zone that we can take before we want to stretch outside of it. And then there's other people that really strive to have more growth and they actually really want to step outside their comfort zone and feel that fear and do it anyway. So at the core of it, it's a fear-based thought pattern. So I really want to highlight that because a lot of the time people have this story or narrative around the imposter syndrome being something that it's like they're afflicted with, and it's not something like a disease, like, oh, but I have the imposter syndrome, so I can't do this thing. Well, actually, that's not true. Every human being, if you're a human on this planet, experiences the imposter syndrome at some point in their lives, and it doesn't ever go away. It's not something that we ever overcome, but it's not something that you're afflicted with. You can work with it, you can overcome it, and you can actually utilize it to a strength. So it doesn't actually have to be something that causes you to play small unless you allow it.
Yeah, and ideally it should probably, hopefully, keep coming back as we overcome it, and then we feel comfortable in that zone because we're like, oh, actually, this wasn't so scary, and oh, actually, I can do this, and I am really good at this, and you kind of sit there for a while, and then you're like, oh, hey, I'm feeling a bit bored here, let's go into this next level, and then you do that again, you're probably going to face imposter syndrome again, and then in which case that's when you again overcome it and work through
100%.
that.
100%. Yeah, you're stretching yourself, right? Every step of the way. And if you are open to that, living a life of stretching yourself and stepping outside your comfort zone, you can pretty much expect you're going to experience it again and again.
Yeah. Okay. And so you mentioned that you have experienced it before for yourself. Could you give us like an example of phases in your business that it might have shown up for you?
Oh my gosh, so many. And this year I've actually been writing a book about it. So I've actually almost lived the experience on a whole new level because I've been living what I'm writing, which has been super fascinating for me, just as the curiosity of how the brain works and how life works. It's been so fascinating about how everything this year has very much happened for me in order for me to feel so much more embedded in the teachings that I am putting into the book. And so to give you an example, yes, right from the get-go, when I first started my coaching business, I did not believe I knew enough. I didn't believe that I was good enough as a coach. When I, started to increase pricing, showed up then. When I started my podcast, it's like, who the hell's going to listen to me? Why would they want to listen to me? What are people going to think? Who the hell does she think she is, right? Like, all of that imposter syndrome talk came up when I started my podcast. When I started running events and started speaking on stages, it showed up massively. When I ran my first keynote, oh my God, that was like on steroids. Like, that was like the imposter syndrome showed up hardcore, and I had to put everything, and this is why I write in the book, like, I had to put everything into practice, like on such a high way, like a heightened way of doing it, because I was like, I cannot get on that stage if this is how I'm feeling. So and then most recently this year, I've been really expanding my network and putting myself in rooms that I feel uncomfortable and a beginner and not good enough or successful enough to be in. And that's been a huge up level of identity. Like, it's every single time I've stepped into that room in America with these incredible mentors that I've been working with, I would step in this room and every single time I'd be like, oh, I don't belong here. I don't know, like, I don't even know what they're talking about. Or there'd be moments where everyone's talking about certain successes they've achieved, and I'd be like, oh my God, I've not done any of that. And so having those moments, but then looking at it as the perfect fit, because if I want to grow, if I want to become that next level of success, you've got to surround yourself with people that are achieving that. So there's just some of the examples that it shows up as, but it shows up in so many different ways for so many people. But those were the moments very much that highlight to me that I've experienced imposter when I've been stepping outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, those are some really good examples. I'm feeling I can't go into too many rooms right now because I've got an 8-month-old, but there's also metaphorical rooms as well. And I saw a post someone shared recently of like, what rooms are you stepping into that are scaring you? And I was like, oh, I am feeling comfortable in all the rooms that I'm in. And there are rooms that I see that I don't want to go in because I feel I would be too small there.
Right.
And it's interesting to kind of be like, okay, is it time to challenge ourselves? Is it time to step into that next level? And I think, as we said, it's such a thing that's powerful and like, powerful is the wrong word, but it's relevant for us when we're 5-10 years into business, 20 years into business, as much as it is when you're first starting your business as well. And I know that I have people listening in all different phases of business, and it's just this idea that if you're feeling this fear of starting a business, that's normal, and you're going to feel like an imposter, like you mentioned as well. Like, who am I to do this? Like, why should someone pay me money to do this? Or actually, a great thing that you're probably going to share on this at some point, or maybe you don't agree with it, but a great thing that I got taught at one point is just this idea that you don't have to know absolutely everything at all times, because I'm like, my expertise at the moment is teaching other business owners how to do design. And sometimes I'm like, oh, but I would never want to teach like university lecturers graphic design, or other graphic designers who have been in the industry longer than me. And it's like, well, no, you don't have to, Jack. You just have to teach the people that are like under you in the best sense of the word, in terms of like they're just not as far along in the journey as you. And so you don't have to be the absolute, albeit expert on everything in your field. You just got to be an expert enough to teach the people that don't know as much as you. And I think that can kind of soften things a little bit.
100%, I 100% agree with you. And I would also challenge that, because what if you actually taught those university lecturers a thing or two, because you know the real world application for it, right? So even like challenging that belief, because I believe that you could bring something unique, something to the table that they may not have. And when we challenge that, again, it's just the fear-based thought pattern, and allowing yourself to be like, it's totally okay. And I agree, you don't have to know anything. And actually, it's also impossible. There is no one person on this planet that knows absolutely everything about one topic, because everything's always evolving, right? Right. So you can say like, oh, but this was the study that was done in 2020, but that study could have been completely made useless.
Redundant.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many things that I think that we just have that fear around it, when really, like, you just need to be 2 steps ahead and be willing to be the beginner, willing to actually try and put yourself out there.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so you will have coached 1,000 clients through this, I'm sure, as well. So where have you seen it holding people back? Like, where have you been like almost frustrated, I guess, a little bit as a coach, being like, come on, like, you've got this. Like, if you just took this step, like, where is imposter syndrome holding people back?
Oh, so many places. Like, it shows up like a self-sabotage almost, like they get to a point where they're, scaling, or they're growing their business and they have some momentum. And then it's almost like the temperature check is like, oh, I'm getting too hot here. This is scary. And then they like sabotage and pull themselves back down, where they feel confident and comfortable. And then they get frustrated and they want to obviously grow again. And so it can show up as we're expanding. It's like almost like we don't feel like we're good enough to go to that next level. Or sometimes it's even when they have accolades come through. So if they've been awarded something, or if someone says something of like, you must be the expert in this, and people are, oh, no, I can't be, no, no such thing. Like it can be that, it can be showing up online. That's a huge one, with visibility, being open to being seen as the expert, or even just talking on different topics can really activate the imposter syndrome. Obviously speaking on stages for sure. Doing a podcast interview, same thing. It can absolutely show up from those places. Raising their prices, really stepping into their authority, like being able to own. And I see this a lot with Australians and New Zealanders as well, where there's this, fear of being too boastful, or, celebrating yourself a little bit too much. And so, and Americans don't have this. This is why I love hanging out in America. They don't have that at all. They're so comfortable in sharing what they bring to the table, and they do it in a way that is so not boastful or in your face. Like, it's just like, well, that's the facts, right? And I just love it. Great. Yeah, exactly. You should want to work with me. I am great. So I love that about Americans. And so it shows up in so many different places. Like it would be hard, like I would be here all day if I was to list them. But like, yeah, like pricing, putting themselves in new rooms, putting themselves in new, like stepping into new elements of business. So it could be like, well, I've never done this part before, so I'm super comfortable over here, but maybe now I'm stepping out to teach something, right? Now I'm stepping out to be a speaker in this, or maybe I'm stepping out to, step into a whole new element of a business. So like even with a client at the moment, she's pivoting in her business, and she's like, I don't feel like I belong here. I don't think I know enough. Like, all of the fears and doubts were coming up for her. And so we worked through it and recognized that it's just her brain wanting to keep her safe, right? All the stories that she's telling herself, they're not true, right? They're not true. There's no evidence to prove it just yet, but the brain's going into self-protection mechanism, and it's going, no, what can we say that's going to cause her to step back into her comfort zone? Come back here where it's safe. Like if our brain had its way, it would want us to just sit and watch Netflix all day because that's safe and it's comfortable, right? There's no danger there. But we know as human beings that we can't grow without stepping outside of our comfort zone. So they're pretty much like the ones that I see a lot with my clients, is like the pricing, selling themselves, even showing up online, speaking, becoming that expert.
I just wanted to interrupt for a moment to say that if you're enjoying this episode, I would love to invite you to my free 3-part video training to help you to create your own stunning visual brand, helping you to grow your business faster and to feel and look $1 million. If you're ready for the best year of business yet, then join over 1,000 business owners who have already taken part in the challenge to get started on creating your own brand. Join us today at whitedeer.com.au/challenge. That's the color white, the animal deer.com.au/challenge. Cannot wait to see you there. Let's get back to the episode. I can picture at this point everyone listening being like, yep, felt that, feeling that, that's me, I'm feeling stuck, or whatever it is. I think you talk a little bit about making imposter syndrome into a superpower. How can we do this? What's the mindset shift that makes this transformation possible?
Yeah, so I take a little bit of a different take. So whenever you read or hear anything about the imposter syndrome, most people, when they talk about imposter, they talk about overcoming it, right? Yeah. Whereas really, like, it kind of like sets us up for a bit of failure, because it's like, oh, well, if I overcome it, then I'll never experience it again. Yeah. But that's not the case. It's always going to come back, especially if you've signed up for a life of growth, and especially if you're in business, it's always a life of growth. Yep. And so challenging yourself every step of the way, you're going to experience it a lot of the time. And so when I think about the imposter syndrome, rather than actually coming from a place of like, oh, I have to overcome it, it's an affliction, it's a disease, like it's something that I can't get rid of, I start to change the way that we think about it, from placing it is actually it can be your superpower. So once we know how to overcome the experience of it, right, overcome the symptoms of imposter syndrome, which is the thought patterns that happen, which is the feeling in the body, the fear response that kicks in, right, the arsenal that your brain uses to cause you to play small. When we learn to work with these, and I teach a lot of the tools around this on how to overcome the imposter syndrome, then you know how to work with it. And if you then learn to embrace it, well, one, expect it. Like, you know that if you're going to put yourself outside your comfort zone, it's going to show up. So I knew when I stepped into that first room in America in February, I knew it was going to show up. I knew I didn't feel like I belonged. I knew it was going to stretch me. So when I was standing there in that foyer and chatting to a bunch of people that I did not feel like I was, like, who was I to be standing in this room, and they're talking about all the things they've achieved the year before, I was having like the full anxiety kick in. I was, my breath was short. I had dry mouth. I was like, you don't belong here. They're going to think you're stupid. I can't believe you flew all this way from Australia. What are you doing? Like, I had all of that going on in my head. I had to use my breath to calm my nervous system down. I had to flip the script in my head and reframe the thoughts that I was having. And then I also had to acknowledge what I brought to the table, because a lot of the time the imposter causes you to doubt everything. And so if you learn to actually stop that from happening and then say, oh, well, actually, I bring this to the table and I can add value here. And this is the experiences that I have. And I can actually be someone that adds value to this room. Like, it's about changing and working with the imposter. So we expect it, we embrace it as it's just a fear pattern. We can work through it. And then we can learn to use it as our superpower. So we actually can use it by seeking it out, because when we seek out experiences that will induce the imposter syndrome, it will grow you beyond your wildest dreams. So that's what I did this year. So I actively was like, well, one, I'm writing a book about it, so I've got to challenge myself to be in situations, so I'm going to experience it. And two, I knew that by signing up, I was signed up for 3 different events to attend in America with the one group. And I knew that those people were next level entrepreneurs experiencing massive success. And I did not feel like I belonged. I knew that by doing that, I was going to experience it, but also it was going to level me up like never before. And it has. Like, I've had such incredible experiences this year, and it's shifted so much within what I believe about myself, my business, the impact that I've had. Like, there's so much that I could spend a whole podcast on. But basically what I'm trying to say is that I actively sought it out. So if I sat back, and the reason why it happened is last year I worked really hard in my business. So I was doing a lot of the hard yards, and I got to the end of the year and I was like, I'm kind of bored. Like, I feel like I've achieved a fair bit, like I'm doing really well, but there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more to this life that I want to live. And I realized that travel was really important to me, and I had stopped doing that for a bit, obviously with COVID and everything. And I was like, but what would scare me? Like, what's something that would actually scare me to grow me? And that was when I signed up for those events. And because I actively sought it out, I was able to experience it, but put myself in those challenging moments to really grow and expand. And so that's one example. Another example was knowing that that was something that was important to me this year. I was like, well, instead of falling back and playing small in moments where I could actually put myself out there and ask for what it is that I want, I challenged myself. That I was like, okay, you say you're going to walk your talk, you're writing a book about it, but are you going to really like show up here? And so there were moments where I was like, I could easily just not take this action. I could just not send that message, send that email, pitch myself, like all the things. And what I did in those moments was like, no, this, I know this is going to grow me. So when we utilize that, we can look ahead. Like, if I even said to you, in 2025, what are some experiences that would induce the imposter syndrome for you? I'm sure that you could come up with a list of different things that you know that as soon as you step in that room, as soon as you signed up for that thing, it would cause the imposter syndrome to activate. But you know that those things will grow you. That's where it can become your superpower, because you recognize where you're playing small. Like you mentioned earlier, like, oh, these rooms I'm super comfortable in, right? Like, maybe there are some rooms that maybe I could put myself in and stop being the small fish in the big pond. And now I can, stop being the big fish in the small pond. I can be the small one in the big pond. And allow yourself to be expanded in those spaces, because we get comfortable. And if you really want to grow and expand, then you could use the imposter syndrome to level you up in ways that you never thought possible.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love that. And it's kind of like it's a tool that we can use to identify the parts in our lives where we can choose to level up a little bit if that's where we're wanting to take things for our life or for our business. Interesting. And so, for you, when you showed up in those spaces, there was the dry mouth and the freaking out kind of inside your body. And I guess those steps of breathing and those steps of kind of reassuring yourself, no, actually, I'm not as bad as my brain's trying to tell me I am right now. Yeah. Did you anchor into those things before you stepped into that room? Like, were you being really intentional before those moments to be like, all right, I'm going to remind myself now while I'm feeling level, I guess, before I jump into those places that are feeling really scary?
Yes and no. Like, I was nervous. Like, I was super nervous to go. I even had a stylist session to figure out what clothes to wear, because I was like, I know, like, the people that I'm connected with in this group, like, they really dress like high level. And I was like, what the hell am I going to wear? So I actually had a stylist session to figure out what the hell to wear. And so, like, thought about everything from jewelry, like, had my outfits planned and everything. And I was still like, not sure whether this is where I should be. And I'd never done it before. So traveling to the other side of the world and going to an event on your own, like, it brings up a lot of fear. And so at the hotel, before I left the hotel, yes, I was like having to like almost already calm my nervous system down because my nerves were like kicking in. And then when I got to the room, so basically we were standing outside and chatting, and even then I was like experiencing it all, and I was talking myself down, and I was breathing, and I was like, no, just stay present as best you can. And then we got led into the room, and I started chatting to a lady, and she was talking, and I was so nervous that I wasn't paying attention. I was like standing with her, but I was actually looking around because I was literally just like couldn't even be present. And she said to me, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to monopolize your time. You go, you talk to other people." And I was like, "Oh my God, Christine, like you're not even here with this person you're talking to." And I said to her, "I'm so sorry." And I just addressed the elephant in the room. I'm like, "I'm so nervous that I just don't even know what to do and where to look." And she's like, "Oh my God, me too." And I said to her, "I really apologize. Please keep sharing with what I want to hear, what you're sharing." And so I was able just to ground in on that one-on-one conversation. And that really helped me just to be fully present. And then what was really fascinating is that like when we started the event, and I reckon it was about maybe, I don't know, an hour in, and Laurie, one of the presenters, was talking about feeling imposter syndrome, and it's not natural for you to experience that when you walk in this room. And as I looked around, I recognized another lady in the room who I had I basically watched her present. She presented, did a speaking thing, and I can't remember what it was for, but it was at this online event, and I saw her present, and she was amazing. And I had been following her ever since, and I was like, I can't believe I'm in the room with her. And then I looked around again, and I saw someone else that I've been following for years, and I was like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm in the room, and like she's invested in this and I've invested in this. And it made me kind of go like, oh, again, I don't belong here. But then one of them put their hand up and said, I don't belong here. And like they gave her the mic, and she just described, she's like, I don't have the level of success everyone has. I'm not good enough to be here. Like, you guys are all so successful. But I know how successful she is. I've seen the stuff that she shares online, and I know like she did this full presentation, and she's multimillionaire, like massive amounts of followers, incredibly talented, is doing very well, and yet she was still experiencing the imposter syndrome. And that was when it really clicked for me, because I was like, we're not alone in any of this. Like, we're all experiencing this, no matter what level you get to, that if you let your mind run away with you, if you let that fear take over, it will talk you into believing stuff that isn't actually true. She had all the evidence in the world to prove that she was the perfect fit to be in that room, and yet she still didn't believe it. It was so fascinating to me. And so, yeah, the tools that I share worked 100%. Like when I walked into the last event, which happened in November, I was a completely different person. I did not feel nervous at all. I felt comfortable. I was able to have incredible conversations, and I still challenged myself. I actually had a podcast day the day before. I rented out a studio and asked incredible guests to come on the podcast. That activated me, right? But the next day when we were in the room for that event, I didn't experience it much at all. So it's really fascinating. Like, it'll be certain moments that you'll have it, and then you'll have evidence that you're safe, and your brain will be like, oh, we've done this before, we're okay. And then you'll challenge yourself again, and it'll show up again.
Yeah. Beautiful. I just got so like entranced into your story. I'm like, yeah, I'm back here. I'm just like totally in on that. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and it's just such a great picture of, yeah, like we look at the people in like quotation marks that are like, it's so successful, and they are, yet we're not that different for them. We're all human. We all face these different things, and while they might, like, while you were feeling like confident in that room by the end, then like it wasn't. There's as you say, there's still other places where you're feeling imposter, and you should, and as we said, like, we should seek that out if that's kind of the trajectory we want our life to go on, of seeking those things. And yeah, it's
and that's actually what you just mentioned there, Jacqui, is actually one of the things that causes us to experience more of the imposter syndrome is when we pedestal people. Yeah. So we're putting people on pedestals, and we're looking up at them, and we're saying, oh my God, they're so successful and they have all these things, they must be different to me, or they must have things that I don't have. We're creating such separation that causes us to feel like we'll never get there. And one of the things that I've done over this year and over even last year is whenever I meet someone that's super successful, I try to find some humanizing trait. It makes me feel like I'm just the same. And so, like, it's super gross, but it's like, well, everyone goes to the bathroom. Like, And even like with Laurie, like I remember walking into the bathrooms in the most recent event and with Laurie Harder, and she was like still doing up the top of her dress, and she was like, please don't do up the whole zip, because she's like, I can't breathe. So she left it open like this much. It was so funny. And I was like, even just like small little moments like that makes people real. And like I feel like sometimes we just pedestal too much, and so anytime I'm even looking online or getting stuck in comparison, I always just come back to one, how do I separate that, like bring the pedestal back down. So I bring the pedestal back down by making them human, and then I lift myself up. So even though you might be acknowledging that someone may be more confident or might be doing something that you really want to do and it's triggering you, we want to say like, it's okay, like you can acknowledge and celebrate someone else's wins and talents and skills and abilities, but just don't discount your own. Bring yourself up there with it. Like notice what you bring to the table too, because you've got to build your self-belief and self-worth in the process. Otherwise you'll always look to everyone else to be better than you.
Yeah, that's such a great thought. And so to finish up, is there like a real, like, I was going to say like a really great tip that you haven't already shared, but I feel like you've shared so much goodness. Maybe like a little action step that we can, if there's a little moment that we're feeling that imposter syndrome, what's something that we can do to kind of get that process started of overcoming or / using it as our superpower?
Yeah. So one of the things I always tell my clients to do, and it's something that I build into my programs and in my masterminds, because it is such a big thing to help support building your self-worth and self-belief, is celebrating your wins. If you don't take the time to reflect and actually uncover how those results were made possible by the things that you did, by the inequalities that made them possible, then we're missing out on so much wealth of knowledge and confidence and evidence from the past that your brain needs in order to feel safe. And when we don't celebrate our wins, it actually perpetuates the imposter syndrome even more, because we're not actually taking stock and we're not finding that proof for us to feel worthy, right? So I would just say, like, daily to weekly, take something from what you've experienced, what you've overcome, something that you've achieved, and celebrate them, and celebrate the small wins. And the way that I suggest doing this is actually not like popping bottles of champagne or speaking about it online. It doesn't have to be anything boastful or anything like that. It is literally getting to the end of the day and saying to myself, okay, what am I proud of myself for? What did I do today? And how did I do that? So if you're able to uncover the inequality that made that achievement or outcome possible, you start to really acknowledge your own inequalities. And so then you can also acknowledge that with other people, and you can start to pay attention to like, hey, like, yeah, they might be great and amazing and they've achieved all this success, but I've also done this, and this. Whereas we often just move so fast to the next thing that we forget what it took to get to where you are. And we forget the things that you were skilled at or talented at, or, you know, you overcame, or you moved through the fear, or you were so determined to make happen. And those inequalities are everything. They mean more than any other type of big success. And we often feel like we almost shouldn't celebrate the small wins. Like we should wait till we hit the bigger ones because then they're worthy of more success. That's just social media just lying to you. Like it doesn't serve you. And so if you can come back to what are the smaller wins, because all the big successes are made up of small steps. So if we're able to just really acknowledge like those smaller things, you'll believe in yourself so much more. So then when you experience imposter syndrome, it won't derail you completely, and it won't cause you to believe that you're not good enough, because you are absolutely good enough and you have room to grow.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that. And you're so right. Like, I think so often we keep on doing the thing, which is great, but we never stop to say like, oh, Jacqui, you just like where I am in business right now, like 5 years ago, Jacqui could never have pictured it. Yet if I just keep on looking for the next thing, which is fine, but not celebrating the things that I have achieved and things that I have grown with, or the little small things, then we kind of miss it. And then we forget that, actually, no, I'm pretty cool as a person, and I'm allowed to be in this room, or I'm okay to be here. I'm okay to pursue this. I'm okay to serve this person. I'm okay to lift my prices. I'm okay to get interviewed on this podcast. Whatever it is, we can do that. So thank you for sharing that little tip. I think it's a big tip. So yeah, thank you for that. If we want to work with you or get in touch or make sure we're in your world for when you release this book on imposter syndrome, how do we connect with you?
So I hang out mostly on Instagram. So you'll find me across all social media platforms, but mainly I hang out on Instagram. So feel free to find me there. My handle is Christine_Corcoran_coach, and I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to send me a DM, let me know what you took away from this episode, and tag or share it on your stories and tag me and Jacqui. We just love to hear the feedback, because it means the world, because it always feels like we're just like us two chatting. So no one else is really hearing. So if you do hear this and you take away anything important, then I would love to hear from you.
I totally agree with that statement. Totally agree. Podcasting is weird. So yeah, Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing those stories and insights. I so appreciate it and look forward to using imposter syndrome as my superpower.
Love it. Thanks so much for having me, Jacqui.
So thank you for joining Christine and I for that episode. I hope you found it as useful as I did. And I want to challenge you to go out now and to think, maybe even brainstorm, like what are the things that are either causing me to feel imposter syndrome now that I can work on overcoming? Or what are some things that I'm not pushing into because I'm fearful of feeling that feeling of imposter syndrome? And step into those areas so you can see that growth happen in your life and in your business. Thanks for joining me and I will see you in the new year for a new podcast.